A journey across the country and deep into the human brain explores what it means to remain creative into that good night. Three artists who continue to innovate, one gerontologist, and seniors who are struggling to come to terms with the changes in their lives, all show us the power of imagination in aging.
The anxiety that is brought on by the thought of becoming old, and you don't particularly want it. You'd like to push it away. But it must come, and you must accept it, and suddenly you are there.
So many of the metaphors about aging are patronizing, but they've stuck around because they're poetic. The autumn of your life, the winter of your years, the snow on the ground, the leaves are falling off the trees.
And people are going to have to really alter that concept of being, retirement is at 60 or 65. It doesn't mean you can't leave your job, but you need something to keep your mind active, engaged. You can't just sit back, I don't think. And I don't think that it would be good for people to sit back and do nothing.
People can now expect to live 20, 30, or even 40 years after retiring. Age 85 and over is the fastest growing age group in this country today. In 50 years from today, nearly 5% of the total population will be what we call the oldest old group, which is 85 and above.
New research on aging is smashing this age-old illusion of knowledge about aging that was filled with negative myths and stereotypes. Once you start focusing on potential in later life, this completely changes the equation and you have a whole new sense about what's possible. This is the most highly educated group of older persons that there ever was, and their demands are very different. I have nothing against bingo, but we are in the beyond bingo society as far as aging is concerned.
If I retire, I'd probably run out to nothing. I think I would wait until God said, it's time to go, come on home. I don't want to stop doing nothing what I'm doing. I want to continue to quilt. It's a lot of joy in making quilts. When you make them, you look at them, you quilt them, they're beautiful.
Arlanzia Petway has been quilting in Gee's Bend, Alabama since the age of 9. Since the age of 78, her quilts have been touring in art museums in a collection hailed by the New York Times as some of the most miraculous works of modern art America has produced.
Our journey begins in Gee's Bend. Here, isolated from the rest of the world, a community of artists wakes up early every morning to get to work. It's been going on for generations, and Arlanzia is now the eldest.
I live here 82 years. 82 years this coming May. The first day of May, I've been living here 82 years. Since I was born, never went no place but here. That's a friend of mine. She lives there. And this is Lola, who I work with every day. She lives there. And that's another friend of mine. He lived there. The first person in my family came to Gee's Bend was Dinah. My great-grandmama Dinah. She said she came here on the last boat in 1859. She was a slave girl. There's only one way in and one way out. The Alabama River is on the other side over here. And on the other side, these woods, on the blue woods there, Alabama River over there. That's where I was born and raised in that spot, that house right on the hill there. That's where my mom was born and raised in that place, and her great-grandmama and my grandmama and Dinah, they stayed there. In those days, we needed the quilt to keep warm because Grandmama Dinah had to spread that quilt on the floor because the cracks was in the floor about something like this wide. If you had hogs, you could look down on the floor and see the hogs, running through under there. Then if the hogs start fighting under there, the dust would come up and it would get in the children's food, and she always had to spread it down and let us sit on the quilt to eat to keep the dust from getting in our food. because the house wasn't good where we were living in, because you could look and see the stars and the moon and anything. You look this way, you can see the sun. You look that way, you can see the stars, and you look up, you can see the moon, because the house was so raggedy.
Well, I just can't keep on crying sometimes. Well, I just can't keep on crying sometimes.
The style, the aesthetic in Gee's Bend has been uninterrupted and is continuous going back more than a century, is it hasn't had a lot of outside influences. So the women have just developed. And now here in the early part of the 21st century, it's a highly developed style. They've been allowed to create and to follow their own aesthetic without having to conform to what somebody else expects of them. Maybe that's what you can see when you look at the quilts. You see joy, and some people say they see pain, and they see sorrow, and it's all of that.
And one of the things that we've discovered in studies of older people, they actually are more in touch with their inner psychological life than at any point in the life cycle.
I lost my son at the hardest one I had. My son, my husband, Willie Petway, born February 1943. He died May the 1st, 15, 1991. This is right here. This is my husband right here. He went to work that Monday and died with a heart attack on his job.
Was that hard for you?
Yes, it was. It sure was hard, very hard. I had those children. I had 5 grandchildren there, and I had 5 of my own children. I had to try to raise them without a husband. It was real hard. It wasn't easy.
How did you do it?
Well, I did it with the help of the Lord. I went to work, and I did it. God helped. He brought me through it, and it was pretty good. It wasn't hard as I thought it was going to be, because I went to work and made a little money, you know.
How did you find time for quilting?
Well, what I did, I made my quilts at night. I would make a quilt every night. I would sew on a quilt and make a quilt at night. You get home and get your supper ready, and you sit up there and I piece quilt around 9 or 10 o'clock at night. She taught me so many things my mom taught me. And she taught me, said, when you get grown and go out in the world, you got to be a woman and stand up. Then she said, if you don't stand up, the world will knock you down. If you don't fight hard, you'll stay down. She said, so many people fell down and wallowed till they died. They never tried to get up and do anything. So don't be the one that fall down, don't try to get up. And so I've been dying in my life, but I got up. Take me a time.
Older people have assumed the role of keepers of the culture. It's really a form of social creativity where they've really helped keep their communities and their families together.
I remember this is what you call the pig in the pen. See, this is the little pig here, and the fence go all the way around him. That's what you call the pig in the pen. And this is what you call the laser gal. She just put pieces between this quilt. But see, those stripes go this way, all those stripes go the other way. And this is one of Mama, I think this is one of her quilts too.
The quilts, they're confident, they're bold, they're graphic. Even the quilts made in the 20s, they're so modern.
And all on yellow piece you see, that's work clothes. And that corduroy piece, that's work clothes. Yeah.
Why do people use work clothes in the quilts?
But that's all you couldn't get nothing but work clothes to make quilts out of. You couldn't get anything to make quilts out of. When I was young coming up, and after I got old, as I am now, I still use work clothes because they make good quilts.
They have similar form and style to much of the painting of the latter half of the 20th century. Abstraction wasn't invented in New York.
Many older people have this inner voice, in effect, that says, if not now, when? Why not? What can they do to me? And then this new inner feeling of liberation translates into many examples of creative expression in later life.
Because she can do whatever she wants to do, and she knew it. I don't think most artists realize that. I don't think they realize they have that freedom. Maybe all art would be more interesting if artists realized they They just had freedom to do whatever they wanted. I know from having spoken to a lot of contemporary artists that are so envious of people like Arlanzia Petway, who don't have to listen to a gallery director or don't have to worry about how museums respond to their work.
Most of the time, women in G's band, they doesn't have a pattern. They lay down at night and they plan the way they want the quilt made, and they get up and make that quilt.
Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you for this food that we are about to receive. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen and thank you. I'm working on a crazy quilt right now. I just about almost got it done. Oh, this is the crazy quilt. This is crazy block.
Lord, have mercy. Save my soul.
No, sometimes you sit and quilt, and it's just coming you to start praising God and thanking God that brought us and delivered us so far. He speak to me and tell me how to put it together. But sometimes I want to go my way and mess up. When I mess up, then I had to rip it apart. Yes, it have. When I was a young woman, I didn't try to live right. I just wanted to dance and hall and go out and party all night. But after, up in my life, I changed. But when I was a young woman, 25 and 26, I used to party all night long. I mean, when 5 o'clock, I had to get up. I had to get out of bed. But when I was young, I liked to lay in the bed till 9 and 10 o'clock when I had to go in the field and chop the cotton and pull corn and peanuts and things. I wanted to lay down till about 10 o'clock in the day. I wanted to just lay down in my bed. It's ice as hot as fall. The arthritis in my hand. I get up every morning and I rub them down because I have to quilt. And that's make them feel better when I have to quilt. It loosen up and get the fever out. It's good for fever. I don't see anything bad about getting old, but my head turned white, and I didn't like it at first, but now I love it. This is my dear friend Mary Bendall, and she's a good person. I love her, and I believe she loved me too. And a person that you get along with and can tease with, you love to be with them. I always can tease Mary and said things to her, and she never did keep no interest against envy in her heart against me, and I didn't keep none against her, and so I just feel good working with her.
I do it because I love it now. Back y'all, I was doing it because I have to do it to keep my children warm. But now I do it because I love it. We don't have to do it just to keep warm now. And then the quilts done got popular. They done got to be an artist. And I think that's the greatest thing ever come through for a quilt.
And we just praise the Lord and thank him for all of that he doing for us. Because we've been down for the longest. Our foreparents didn't have this opportunity that we have. They didn't teach us nothing about art. They didn't know anything about art. But they taught us what they know. And there's the peace quilt to keep the children warm.
Why don't you come on in this altar? It's gonna rain. Why don't you come on in this altar?
The creative process, there are a number of ways in which it has a positive effect on your brain and your body. Many acts of creativity, you have this wonderful sense of mastery or control in the process. A number of us over time became increasingly aware of the number of talented older people who were unrecognized. And so we formed this group called the Creativity Discovery Corps, which is designed to identify these people and then to promote their work.
The mandala is a really wonderful image for you because you're so focused on learning.
It involves people at many different ages in the Corps. They're all volunteers, and it's a creative process in identifying these people and making their work visible.
Take care. Have a very good interview and evening. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Great.
We're going to visit the home of an architect who's approaching 98 years, and he's doing some truly extraordinary things. He's submitted a design at the age of 96 for the 9/11 memorial. I define creativity as bringing something new into existence that's valued. Creativity is really one of the realms that has advanced the understanding of brain-body interactions, where the mind influences the brain, which then influences the immune system. The whole area of what's called brain plasticity is really quite fascinating in terms of how the brain changes with aging. Brain cells have projections. They're called dendrites. They're sort of like branches from a tree. And as you challenge your mind, your brain cells sprout new dendrites, like your fingers are coming out of your hands. Whenever we challenge our brain, we produce new dendrites, and that capacity knows no age limit. Made it. Very nice to see you, Miss McLaughlin. Thank you for having us over here.
This competition had over 5,000 submissions. Architects love to go in competition. I wanted to rebuild a world free trade center. I'd heard about these labyrinths, and I could see that if you were a lost soul, and you come here or you're looking for your lost one, or that you could just walk through it, and it struck me as being appropriate for the mood for this busy little park. And I thought that this would be for future generations to come here to this site and think about the nature of humanity.
Through this process of interviewing elder artists, Dr. Cohen and the Creativity Discovery Corps are able to stimulate and encourage them to continue to create.
There is a growing amount of evidence suggesting that those people who have really continued to challenge themselves in many different ways, taking new courses, new hobbies that are challenging, and the point I make is if you feel like your brain is sweating, sort of like a physical exercise, if you're not sweating, you're probably not exercising hard enough. If you feel your brain is sweating, you're probably challenging yourself well. Crossword puzzles can do this, word games, everyday creativity. So somebody who develops a new recipe, people love the recipe, they've brought something new into existence that's valued, they have a tremendous sense of accomplishment, mastery, or control. So they go through the same dynamics as somebody who's created a great painting.
There. But here, all the lines have gone. The wrinkles have all disappeared.
Ladies and gents, calls on stage, please, for Act 1, orchestra to the pit, please, maestro, to the stage, please.
Frederick Franklin was one of the original dancers to introduce ballet to America in the 1930s. Over his 70-plus year career, Freddie originated many roles by choreographers who invented ballet, such as Leonid Massine and George Balanchine. Today, at the age of 90, he is at the Cincinnati Ballet playing the role of the friar in Romeo and Juliet.
I'm always amazed. I can walk on in New York City as the friar and I get applause, and I love it. At my age, it's just right. I can do it and I can express things and use my arms and hands, and oh, I just have a lovely time. I came in yesterday and had to learn it all over again. It's different. Certain things are being emphasized in this production that are not in the other.
Okay, all right. Let's do this again. Right.
But I'll get there by the time we open. I've never given up, and I won't. Not yet, anyway.
I don't even get my man. I'm supposed to be killing Romeo, but I don't even do that.
Never mind. You get there.
He dies
That's
in the end.
Story. I was born in 1914, so, you know, I go back a long way, and I've been through many stages of the ballets and seen changes all along the way. So it's changes, physical changes, floors, lights, everything. We have the limelight. I mean, the limelight. I was at a crossroads, as I said, when I was 31, and I was really, I can tell you for a man, 31 as a dancer, it's a very difficult age. It's beginning to go. There are things there. You have good nights, wonderful nights, and then you have a night where, well, it could have been better, but it was lovely. And there was Balanchine, and he said, you will now stand in front of people for the rest of your life, and you will give, and don't expect anything back.
More rap.
That's it. Otherwise, it all goes on one side on this. That's better. Oh, much better.
In addition to performing, Freddie helps to preserve great masterpieces of ballet. Here he is coaching La Sonnambula by George Balanchine, which originally debuted in 1946.
It's giving the artist the essence. I mean, you can teach steps, you can teach movements, but what does it all mean? Then the coach comes along and says, now, if you'll try this, this will work this way, and that will work that way. And don't forget, more face, more head, more arms, because that's the artist's audience, that coach. Seventh Symphony, actually it was one, I had just joined the ballet, and Miassine had only seen me dance once, and this part came up, and I remember we started, and he didn't tell me exactly what I was doing, but the movements were very suggestive of something growing. But it wasn't until the opening night, and I read on the program, First movement, Seventh Symphony, Frederick Franklin, the spirit of creation.
I was doing the spirit of creation from Seventh Symphony. I was creating the world. That's, I guess, the most important thing what I learned from him doing this part, creation. Like everything is just version, and you make something new, something beautiful, and just put your whole self. And as Freddie said, just do it yourself. It doesn't have to be a specific way, it's just the way you feel it. His stamina, keep doing this for so many years, he's done it, and his energy.
Don't forget the heads. I eat properly, and I have a drink and a glass of wine every night. I do. I've been through it. I've been in for repairs. I have, oh yes, I've had the prostate and the 2 hernias and the triple bypass, and here I am. I'm around young people every day of my life, all young, and I suppose I take from them. And they won't allow me to be old. They won't. Remember, we're athletes. We are. And the time comes when you pack up the shoes and say, that's it. If this falls apart, that's it. Once you realize what being a dancer entails, you either stick with it or you get out. Or you get so far and you think, I can't do this anymore. It demands everything, everything. I have no regrets, not 1 minute. And I'm only so grateful.
But now, how does this apply to those of us who may not even have time for the arts until we retire? And when aging does catch up with us, if it does, and we have to go, say, to a nursing home, if we do, what will be there for us? Will there be creative ways to express ourselves? Can we dance our way around Alzheimer's disease? A trip to 3 sites in Washington with Arts for the Aging may give us a glimpse into the hidden power of imagination.
Dance is very interesting because in the studies of different activities that may delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease for those at risk for the disorder, dance is high on the list in terms of a positive impact. And it probably combines two different important elements. One is the mental challenge of learning the steps, the choreography, a wonderfully brain-stimulating experience, and then the dance, which is so physically challenging. Imagination is so core to the human experience. It's what contributes to us wanting to climb mountains, explore space. It's even more fundamental in many ways than memory, that it's accessible.
So this is called mirroring. So we're going to continue doing it, and Quicksilver members are going to get with some other of you guys.
And people can be with someone who's sitting right next to you. You can do it.
This is beginning to alter the shape of the landscape with more and more opportunities for older persons to tap into their potential.
Because, getting old, I'm an expert in it. It's really no fun at all. But the other, you don't know what the alternative would be like. Now, getting old and sick is even less fun. And getting old, sicklish, and being financially strapped is really no fun. So I decided it was already so little fun to get old. I really had to make the life for older people better.
Arts for the Aging is a nonprofit, and we send professional artists to work with seniors in daycare centers and in nursing homes, and they lead art workshops, visual and performing art workshops, drumming, dancing, music, poetry, painting, drawing. And the idea is to draw out the personalities of the elderly people involved, bring to light all of their wonderful experiences.
Breaking from water, the old turtle, sunning herself, suddenly slips back to sea.
Suddenly slips back into the sea.
Like people, you don't want to sit and sun yourself on a rock forever. You want to get back into the action.
That wouldn't be me slipping back in because
I'm not
a swimmer.
You're not a swimmer.
I'm not a swimmer, so I would be slipping in.
There unfortunately is no intervention that can alter the course of Alzheimer's disease, bring back that mental functioning, because the nature of disease is one where it continues to get worse.
Yes, I have a memory of being in love with a nice young man, and I had all kinds of thoughts about plans, what we were going to do, and where we were going, where we were heading. And suddenly it became dark and it wasn't there anymore. And those thoughts are what I miss. You miss them.
This isn't really about us having the answers. They have the answers. We come into the creative process.
What I would like to do is to have someone read once again the second haiku on the page.
There are an increasing number of approaches to look at how we can improve the quality of life for people with Alzheimer's disease.
I think offering to them the use of their imagination is very powerful. Suddenly it takes them out of the realm that they have to think of something or that they have to remember something. But in the moment, they can imagine something. Always. That never seems to fail.
Let's imagine what they'll be serving at the festival.
Mm-hmm.
I smell hot dogs.
You smell hot dogs at the festival? I think they would have something more exciting.
That's too ordinary.
Just plain
But,
hot
okay, I
dogs.
love that.
History.
Ooh.
Something
in it.
that you don't eat often. Music?
Music. We have to have music at a festival.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What kind of music?
Mozart. Lively.
Mozart. Did you say Mozart?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice
love
and
it.
light.
I love it.
Dum, da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum.
Well, when I began working with people, I began realizing that how important the socialization was. To bring people together, to share, to create community.
So all of us have some pleasant memories in life that we have experienced, and we like to reminisce and look back over. How did I make it over?
You all know what these are, right? Tambourines are actually really, really old instruments.
Well, my father really enjoys music, and because he can get it here, it really brings him out. He's suffering from depression. He's 88 years old. It's been just fantastic for him. He enjoys it, and I can tell when he's participating in those programs because there is a difference in him.
I actually am more interested in being with people that are celebrating something, and people that have gone through many years of living have a certain amount of mastery. It's an acknowledgement, I guess, of their life. Celebrating is sort of like the physical organism, they say, begins and ends with the heartbeat. So, you know, drumming is time. You got to keep time when you drum, so that's the heartbeat, you know, medium tempo. It's a group dynamic, and the energy gets raised, you know, even above the group. You know, what the group brings in it is one thing, but then by the end, there's something else that happens.
Those at quite an advanced age, despite a lot of frailty, have wonderful morale. And people have tried to explain this. But most recently in brain research, people have focused on a part of the brain called the amygdala, which processes emotions. The amygdala with aging favors positive emotions and screens out somewhat negative emotions. And this may be an important explanation to help us understand why morale is so good at those in advanced age.
I was working on a project interviewing major figures in 20th century American music. And many places I went, people said, whatever happened to Leo Ornstein?
Time is the most elusive thing of all. Is there such a thing as time altogether? There may be nothing more than just this empty thing through which a person lives for a number of years through, either to the age of 80, 90, or in my case, an incredible 103. I think I'm closer to 105, but they say 9. They looked it up, and somewhere in the little town in the south of Russia, it was written down when I was born. And by God, I am this age. It's scary. Yes. To be 101, maybe 102, but 109, it even scares me.
Leo Ornstein's father, I believe, was a cantor, so he had this musical background.
Tatif, the brother-in-law, had actually had him play for Joseph Hoffman, a very famous pianist of the time. He showed this incredible talent, and Hoffman recommended that he go to the conservatory. And of course, this was a huge opportunity for anyone in Russia, especially for someone that was Jewish. Most professions were barred from Jews at this time. They simply could not enter them. And so it was this was an economic opportunity as much as anything. He went from Kremenchug to St. Petersburg. It was a 3-day train ride. He was completely cut off from his own family. In fact, there's one story where as the train was leaving, taking his father back to Kremenchug, he broke away and ran and tried to catch the train and didn't.
And he never forgot what it felt like to be left in St. Petersburg as a very young boy.
Russia was a very dangerous place for Leo and his extended family, and for anyone who was Jewish. It was absolutely essential that Leo get out, that his family get out if they were to have a future. There are gory, detailed stories of murders, and Cossacks coming through and simply beheading people, spearing people. They arrived in February of 1906. He enrolled at the Institute of Musical Art. Mrs. Bertha Firing Tapper decided she wanted this young man as her own, and that began a relationship that was seminal to Ornstein.
The family hoped that he would continue to be a protege and be a star. Concert artists in those days made a great deal of money.
He would sometimes practice 8, 10, 12 hours a day, something like that.
He would play a concert, they'd get on a train, he'd take out his silent keyboard, he'd maybe catch a few hours of sleep, he'd practice again right before the concert, and he'd go on. He's so fleet of finger, you know. We talk about people being fleet of foot, but he had an easy speed at the keyboard and could simply navigate all 88 without breaking a sweat.
He would give, at times in 1 month, maybe 20, 25 concerts. He was traveling constantly.
He had his pianos going before him so that they could be in place.
7 pianos that would go ahead of him. He was in demand. Reviews everywhere he goes say, the biggest crowd of the season came out to hear Ornstein over and over again. One critic referred to him as the most salient musical phenomenon of our time. He was, it's hard to imagine how anyone could be bigger and more significant than Ornstein was in those years he concertized. He made a lot of money.
Unfortunately for his family, they were not very happy when he began to be a composer.
There was absolutely no explanation for what came into his head. He simply heard new sounds and had to play them. He went to a lesson with Bertha Firing Tapper, played them for her. She assumed he had gone mad. He tended to believe she was right. He played the whole piece through a second time, and she decided he was not mad, that this was a genuine piece. Regardless, he goes to Europe with Tapper in 1913 and makes quite a splash with new music.
They felt that something like Dan Sauvage was really savage and dangerous because they had not heard anything like this. Ornstein, who was seen to be a messenger from another world, really, as that the way they wrote about him. People were fascinated. He was criticized severely, but that made him more and more popular.
There was a tremendous amount of adverse reaction. Some were terribly stimulated by the things, you see. Some were stimulated by the general sound of the thing, it wasn't that they really understood its sheer musical value, but the volume and 1,000 other things that, and some were outraged altogether, where they would throw things at me.
Danse Sauvage became like his calling card. It was sort of like a modernist anthem for 4 or 5 years. It became a huge, huge fan favorite during the 1910s.
People were aware that there was something that was going to change the course of music and the arts forever. All of the old traditions were going to be turned over into what became known as modernism. Not only was he the most important composer of what was called modern music, he was the only one at that time.
At times I have to, they tell you, where does it all come from? I said, now you're asking the $64 question. Why, you should have heard what you did. You never can explain, never. But I certainly heard that. Here's the evidence.
Ornstein particularly felt he was a conduit, a channel, for these ideas that came from somewhere, and he felt this was a gift. And then he would laugh about it and say, a gift, but a terrible bother. I'd like to go out fishing, but I have to stay here and get these sounds out of my head.
What are you going to do when ideas do crowd into your head and keep tormenting you until you finally get it down on paper?
I think Leo's music, his best music, has a kind of truthfulness to it. It sounds immediately conceived. It sounds inevitable. There's a rhythmic energy and drive that pulses and pushes you through the piece, and you say it couldn't have been any other way. Yes, there are these sounds that are kind of clanking, but they are always atmospherically clanking. I don't hear them as sounds that are simply clanking for clanking's sake. They serve a purpose. He hears beautiful, thick, rich timbres, very full timbres. And then out of that full, rich sonic landscape, this melody will come wailing, and it seems like the most natural thing.
You felt that he knew what he was doing, what he wanted to do, and there was nobody going to stop him.
Now, I cannot think this out. But I couldn't possibly think the left and the right hand in sequence as fast as I can simply just make it simply, in other words, make my arms move that rapidly. And that is why there have been so many disasters sometimes when the syncopation, you see, it get closer and closer, and finally particularly in the orchestra, you've got to be very, very careful, because obviously there's a point at which they simply cannot come in such a small area. Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried that? It's very funny. You can do it yourself. Just take a pencil, or any one of us, take a pencil and do this to it, and then say, ah, 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 ah. And then finally what happens is your eyes, of course, run right together with your... in other words, you cannot think in between your beats. There are some days when it doesn't matter what I think. I simply just find utterly unpalatable, and I simply refuse to use it. I just don't feel that it's good enough, that it doesn't satisfy my my critical evaluation. Just refuses to accept it. And sometimes the danger, of course, you understand, with the composer being overcritical, he can annihilate himself completely. One has to be very careful not to become obsessed with one's own style.
But the story is not as simple as it sounds. One of the mysteries of Leo's life is that he dropped out of the public eye at the peak of his career. he left New York to open a music school in Philadelphia, raised a family, and 50 years later, he was rediscovered, living in a trailer park in Brownsville, Texas.
That's when Vivian Perlis began to support and promote Ornstein. At that point, he starts writing again. And that happened when he was in his early 80s.
When he began to compose again, as an old man, his wife Pauline became his collaborator.
When I met the woman that became my wife, that probably was the high point of, but that is the high point of many human beings. And she was a very rich young American, and I was the proverbial poor artist, you know, practically penniless, and she was loaded, but it didn't matter. We got together, and there's something that's known as falling in love, and we fell in love with each other. And she said, "We'll make it, we'll make it."
And they had a symbiotic kind of relationship that where somehow he could dictate what he wrote, and it would be in Pauline's hand.
Pauline, this is going to be in 2/4 time. Now, the upper line, yes, it's in treble and bass, that's right, and it's 2/4 time. Now you'll see very simple. You go to the A flat, Pauline, the top line A flat, the extra line A flat, for an eighth, and now you're going to have 2/16, the B flat and the A flat again. Go down to E for a quarter, and close your measure up.
On a good day, when he has these ideas floating around, he'll get up after breakfast and start on one. And while I'm trying to get down just a little of that, another one comes into his head. And then another one, and sometimes 3 and 4 in one morning. I think I once wrote you, I was swamped. And to pin him to one of those to finish it out, every time he gets busy on one, he thinks of another one. And we have just thousands of pages of half-finished things because they came in clumps.
But I do know that when she died, I experienced a loss and a grief that I knew nothing about prior to that. No, the only thing that will obliterate it now is myself being dead. That's why I don't fear death at all. I rather welcome it now. I think myself, this looking for the meaning of life is something extraneous. I think life, the way we lead it, is the meaning. Trying to seek for an inner meaning is a myth. Is there some power behind, for a better word, called God? Who knows? Who knows?
Leo wrote to me. One time was on the occasion of his 100th birthday. "Dear Vivian," he wrote, "I am beginning to feel my age." Just beginning. I always thought there would be some kind of epiphany that would happen before I died, but I realize now that is not going to happen. I think he wrote me again when Pauline died that I can't possibly go on. A year later, he was composing a sonata of major proportions, that last sonata, that piano sonata that he wrote. He was happy, and he was not out of it at that age. And in fact, his family told me that he was a little happier than he had been during the earlier years of his life.
Yes, I do hear things in spots here and there that remind me of the old days, but this complete coordination, I don't really have. I have it in spots now, and I wake up at night and write down a few things, but it hasn't got the connection.
You can go past Leo's room and you can hear him humming, and I don't think he's even aware that he's humming, but he just has this thing that comes to his mind, I'm sure, and it just flows out, as probably how he wrote his music, how it just flowed, because he'll always tell you, I don't know where it came from, it just came.
For you to hear certain things, to see certain things, the truth of it is that no one knows. That's really in the hands of the gods, as they say. Why you should have heard what you did, you never can explain. Never.
Another one of my favorite stories is about Georgia O'Keeffe. In her own words, I read a part where she talked about her fear of flying. But when she was in her mid-70s, she had reached such stature as an artist that she was under more and more pressure to fly. And then she looked out the window of the airplane one day and she realized she no longer had a fear of flying. And she felt this tremendous exhilaration. And this translated into perhaps the largest body of work that she ever did. It was almost 100 pieces. And they were the biggest images she had ever done. One of them was 8 by 25 feet in size. And I will give her full credit that she fully understood the double meaning, the double entendre of the title of this work, which was Sky Above Clouds. One of those images that's titled Sky Above Clouds, this beautiful image of clouds and blue sky above it. And I feel that's a much more accurate metaphor of aging today. And now with this whole new understanding of aging with regard to what's possible, even at a very advanced age, there's this need and responsibility to try to create more opportunities for older people to access their potential.
Together, it seems our journey has just begun. As we as a population start to live longer lives, will we see age as a burden or an opportunity? Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote at the age of 92, "I cannot say farewell to life and you in formal words. Life seems to me like a Japanese picture, which our imagination does not allow to end with the margin."
Creativity is universal, and if it's universal, it's not going to be simple to describe, and that's a plus.
And how do you feel now?
I feel good. If my knee wasn't hurting, I'd be a girl.
What was that?
I'd be a young girl if my knee wasn't hurt. My knee's the only thing got me. I have this knee. It's bad. One of them got better. This one is better.
So you feel like a young girl even though you're 82?
I feel good. I sure do.
The thin
But I've never lost the love of what I'm doing. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Showtime. It certainly is. I hope we'll try our very well. It will be fun.
Breakfast is ready. I'm ready to eat. Ready to eat and roll and shine and go. Glass of orange juice.